Sheila here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Sol Hour and Jupiter Day. Sun is applying to square Pluto, closing square, and the Moon is applying to conjoin Mars and Mercury. Ascendant 4 degrees of Sagittarius and midheaven with Ketu. So I want to talk about something that is so happening in 2019, 18. And then I saw it happening in 2023. And this was something that I had aversion to. And this is going to be a difference between the willing consent, sex positive emphasis community and other spiritual communities. So after the Me Too, and with Neptune in Pisces, there was a lot of people doing manifestation, people doing spiritual experiments, people learning how to have astral sexual encounters, people, yeah, which of course would provoke also the issue of violations in that field, and then the conventional type of therapy or psychiatry even had no idea what this thing is when everybody was learning how to astral project or how to have shared dreams and even affect people's dreams. I saw a course like that around, and one of the experiments that were made um, was to say yes to everything. Now, I came from the sex positive community, and we emphasized a lot a sense of embodiment. So before saying yes, it was like, what is my lower chakra feeling about that? What is my higher chakra feeling about it? What is this part of the body? What is that part of the body? And yes would have to be something that's really all encompassing. Um, so I was not going for those type of experiments, and for me they really tried to hack the nervous system, and they put me through torture and trauma, um, and that was that was basically a different route, and I basically argued my stance, which was I never consented, and love needs to be actually loving, and I need to understand of what you know of what I'm doing and why. And okay, so I don't just assume everything is in my benefit, where if it's abusive, then it's abusive. Like, I did not go for a lot of the things that other people um, went for. And what happened, particularly with the Yes experiment, is that certain ladies began a bit to have positive experiences at first, which was, and the experiment was that everything that somebody offers them, they say yes. And so for ladies that were more embodied, then that would mean saying yes to themselves, which is the best manifestation of that. But um, to their authentic self. Okay, I'm not talking about people who are tortured, and saying yes to themselves is like to torture all the world. That's not a caveat. um, but what happened is that they let these women sometimes even buy a house, and it supposedly was to take a step forward, with their dreams and so on. But then they basically tried to do rituals and try to entangle these people. I saw it for women, but men, maybe you can tell me if it was done for men too. And what happened with that was that those women began to be more susceptible to follow commands. Okay, because in the beginning, saying yes to everything was like an experiment of opening up to new possibilities and so on and so forth. But later, that would not be the case, and they try to entrap these women in rituals. Now, here's the thing: if somebody came from the willing consent community, the sex positive, then even when people talk about like, oh, people have to do, let's say, the Illuminati hand gesture because they have to show an omen that people like consented. No, 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 no. That's not consent. It's not consent. So for us, this is not even a contract. Okay, that all these things, they were not even like, we understand what is informed willing consent, where people actually have to have an option and set of alternatives where their survival, their joy of living, their well-being is not affected by saying no. Whereas the people that were doing the yes experiment, they were more susceptible to suggestions and um, that was uh, um, a part of a certain programming that later they had a very hard time, dealing with. But again, the sooner a person becomes aware, and this is where again, being able to say no is an imperative. Um, it's also an imperative to success because there's so many things. Even when I talk about like astrological talisman or elections, there's so many elections that I say no to, even though they're like great elections, because it keeps me with the elections that I say yes to. And then I can go with something that's like, hey, how's the energy? The energy is actually good. Okay, I say yes to that election. I'm aware, let's say, um, okay, of certain things, or I try things and I see if it works for me. But that notion of discernment is really, really important, um, because we become aware of not everything that we're told is yes. Now, when people say yes to everything and kind of give their full consent to something um, that they don't know what it is, and the sooner they can discern and withdraw consent, because they're going to have to use the arguments that us people from the sex positive community were using, but in jurisdiction, in legalities, taxation related things, the things they got themselves perhaps entangled, even contracts, they got themselves perhaps entangled with by that yes experiment. And our susceptibility to like hypnotic commands and all types of stuff that with a sex positive community, and all of that was meant to traffic them basically. Um, so just this came up where there was there was a lot of abuse around those type of basically social experiment, which intention was to open people to possibilities, but there was no intention behind to have them happy, sovereign, thriving, and so on. Um, Now, for the sex positive community, um, the caveat that they went for was accessibility of resources like housing or um, Okay, and this is where they wanted to equate sex and intimacy to a resource that, to, let's say, nourishing food. Okay, if a person doesn't get nourishing food, then the body is not. Now, it's true that if a person doesn't get intimacy and so on, but it's not something that you can distribute like food, because people are not products. Um, and those trafficking agendas, the sex positive community was causing a lot of troubles to the people that were not going with all the informed consent and all the communication and all the embodiment. Um, they were also the people that were most susceptible to, like, the tantra scams. The guys that wore white robes and raped everyone um, under the guise of healers. Um, and they were capitalizing on people that needed to curate something about their sense of embodiment and reconnection with intimacy and sensuality. Um, so the reason that the sex positive community, the willing consent part of of the sex positive community, which is very way more marginal than it should be. Okay, but that was exposing many things, like people not even willing to participate, not even able to participate in any one of the exercises showing of how deep the trauma was, like, let's say, around touch, or okay, or other experiments, or seeing that, well, they actually need a child, that they actually need a child type of the touch that you would touch a child, and it does not invoke eroticism. For example, for me, it took so many years until I was able to experience myself as in a place which is not connected to eroticism, because there were ritual abuse done from far, probably, since I was very likely an infant. And I grew up in a family, like, it's not coming from the parent that was growing, at least physically, with. Um, but this was, and it was all the way to corrupt therapy, okay, as well. Um, Now, when people are actually, connected, embodied, whatever you're going to call it, they don't go for a lot of those things that really rely on people being dissociated from their own sense of self, and either feeling unworthy, or what, okay, or um, either feeling unworthy, thank you, or not even, like, not even understanding what choice is, okay, which is, and how it was used to gaslight people, saying there's a choice when there wasn't any, okay? Um, Accepting the unacceptable. Um, Basically, all the sovereignty that the Aries wants, okay, has to do with that. Um, and the very simple thing of a child being a child, was not even there. And everybody were required to take responsibility and accountability as though they were children once, like, which is um, basically something that was beyond, like, it is so abusive on every single on existence, which is why, the thought of like global nuclear holocaust is not just for people, it's also for the environment, for the animals. And this is so aggressive. Yeah, this is so aggressive, and it's not even oppressive, it's like oppressive. You have to have like an existence for something to be oppressive. That's beyond that. And that the entire cosmos collapses to those type of things. I remember I did the reverence of Sedna yesterday, and how Sedna was, Sedna, for the people not having food was not just the people were not having food when Sedna drowned. And you can watch my Sedna reverence video, but it was the marine life disappearing. It's not people were not able to fish. It's not enough fish. Not enough. It's the entire ecosystem was affected by the action of the father to traffic his child and create eroticism about the child. Um, and this is why the touch um, and then scold the child for not wanting that touch. um, they were doing even, yeah. A child would either be seen as a pacifying object, okay, kind of like, when I bought Panda that is now not with me because it stayed with, um, then it was like a pacifier. It was like stuffy, the child was like a stuffy, or it was used to basically for the needs of the adults. And this is beyond abusive. Um, then of course children will grow up that way, or even were neglected, okay, because neglect was also an issue. um, and and either way, the child craved a certain touch that they never had a reference for, and the approximation would only come around trafficking. um, and the entire system that's supposed to be like the grown-ups and adults is like praising that, creating policies that support that, and because they were those children. um, and they had to do that to other children. Um, and then would people like the Sedna story were just like avoiding, and when they're trying to meet their needs, there are attempts for them to not do that, because this shakes the foundations of entire world. But not shaking the foundations of entire world, or not reconnecting with one's like inner child in an adaptable, benefic way, that creates a situation where entire cosmos, and this is, with the Sedna story, it's entire cosmos, and she's astrologically so far away. So, and it takes 12 years, 12 millennia, 12 years, 12 millennia, 12 years is Jupiter, 12 millennia to surround the zodiac. So, when Sedna was drowned, the marine life, okay, and I predict something like that also. Like, we think about the time we had the salmonella and everything. So that was like food poisoning, but it was done by the same cults that traffic the children. Um, but also think about the fact of like how marine life are disturbed, the neurodivergent orcas, and um, it's not just the oil companies; it's also the oil companies, but the draining, the like drilling oil, bringing oil like from the oceans, but also the Wi-Fi that is like underwater and affects like the waves and frequencies. Um, so it's like technology that connects us, but we need to do it in better frequencies. I'm recording. I'm recording. Um, so there's children that had no, they had a right to be, but there was never being. And whether in time, in space, in touch, or um, and when they were taken, some of the children that were taken away, then they weren't taken to like loving families. Okay, that they would even put in children with offenders against children. Um, I'm not gonna get into like the really details. Annika Lucas does get into that, which is like if the offender is like sadistic or not. But I don't think they even bother to check it. Anyway, it's not good for the child. Um, and there were policies that actually said that's good for the child in the, I think, up until the 80s. So because those wealth consolidation practices that were reliant on creating child trafficked slaves um, relied on humanity being completely complacent with totalitarian global control. And when people began to see of why don't they have, let's say, financial freedom, or why is something not working for them, and so on, then the first is like, this is oppression, this is oppression, this is oppression. But those that managed to get out of oppression, they were closer to the embodiment. And it was about letalities as well, like whether a woman that needed help from the welfare only when she worked on like her orgasmic self, um, and began to purge like the grief and so on, then suddenly she got life-saving help. Um, and then because I was like with her on like teaching her how to do so, like how to translate the sex positive teachings to resolution that fits like also those cases. Then I was further targeted. um, well, me not having back then access to my child self. The non-eroticized version of just existing, and even when I was like in therapy and when I was hugging Panda, there was not even ability for me to be in my body And as a non-sexual being, and this is where the big troubles began, like everything began to completely collapse.